Good afternoon and welcome to the People's Poet Podcast, also known as Triple P. I'm your host, Tony Robles. This is our first episode of the People's Poet Podcast. We're broadcasting here from Western North Carolina, and in future podcasts, we are going to be speaking to community people, leaders, artists, many people that make the community tick. This afternoon, we have a very special guest who is running for Henderson County School Board. Her name is Florence Allbaugh. Florence, welcome to People's Poet Podcast.
Thank you, Tony, and congratulations on your maiden launch.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to have you as our first guest. I understand that you just got through doing a little yard work.
Yes, I did, and trying to finish making a fire pit outside and planting some new plants.
Well, you know, that's kind of metaphorical for roots, you know, being planted and being grounded. Tell us a little bit about, you know, how long you've been in this area and how long you've been, you know, an educator.
Okay. After I graduated from college, I graduated from Wright State University in Ohio. I got my degree as a Bachelor of Science in Education, and I was hired and recruited to teach down in Fort Lauderdale. And so I went down there from Ohio and taught in Fort Lauderdale for about 8 years. And I taught middle school science and earth and physical and environmental science. And I was also the Honor Society teacher, did science fairs, did everything. I was also the rep for the Broward Teachers Union. So I did a lot down there. We lived down in Fort Lauderdale for 11 years. And then our family moved from Fort Lauderdale to Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. There I joined Rotary. I started my own business. I have a patent. I invented a multi-purpose bag. But I've always been fascinated with children education. I started learning about Montessori. And then because of hurricanes and things, we left Hilton Head after 11 years, and we moved to North Carolina. And when we were here, my daughter wanted to continue doing her Montessori, and so there was no Montessori that existed in this Western North Carolina region, so I started a Montessori class where she could continue her education. And after she was in middle school and high school, since she's my youngest, I decided to go back into teaching. So I started subbing in both Transylvania County and Henderson County schools. And I have worked in Henderson County schools for the most part of it. And now I'm running for Henderson County School Board.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about what some of the challenges have been, and some of the more, you know, some of the challenges and some of the things that have made you, you know, very proud of your profession? And, you know, if you can maybe just talk a little bit about those two things.
Well, to go into education, you have to love working with kids. And I do love working with kids. It is definitely not for the pay, but I think teachers also need respect. We also need to have diversity in education, because currently in the two counties where I've worked, and I've subbed in different subject areas and different levels, from elementary to middle to high school, I've noticed that I'm the only Asian in the county, in both counties, that is teaching. And so that, you know, opened my eyes. But, you know, I kind of looked over it, and, you know, everyone was, you know, nice to me and was pleasant. And so I had no, you know, any qualms or concerns. However, I think that because also in speaking with the students, they feel like, why isn't there someone who looks like me in education? And we've had this discussion in my classroom. I said, well, that's, you know, up to the hiring manager to hire who they can. And there's some challenges associated with that.
I guess, you know, with the demographics that are changing and are going to continue to change, we need to address that. in our education. We talked about, I think one of your platforms is diversity and inclusion. Can you tell us the ways in which you would, you would work to strengthen those types of things? Would it have something to do with hiring more teachers of color, perhaps including more curriculum that addresses inclusivity and diversity? If you could maybe talk about that a little bit.
I think that to really truly address inclusivity, diversity, and inclusion, you have to have an area really focused on that. Your HR department has to be focused on diversity and improving diversity and inclusion in the schools. And that means that not only are you including and recruiting potential teachers from the high school level in terms of the career technical education aspect, because it's called CTE, where students who are not college bound are able to take courses, complete a training, and be able to go into 2-year college and then continue on into 4-year degree if they so. One of the things that they have included this year is where they can provide funding for schools to provide teacher CTE classes for students, where they can learn about teacher education so that you can have the potential to increase your pool of candidates for teacher education. The other way to do it is to reach out to the different universities and the School of Education in the different universities in the Carolinas and surrounding areas to talk to them about education and what are the benefits of going into education, increasing the salary for teachers, having more respect for teachers who are teaching, have better subsidies and stipends for teachers. Right now, teachers are holding down 3 and 4 jobs just to make ends meet.
So it sounds like a lot of what, or a large part of what you're talking about is advocacy.
Correct.
You're an educator, but you're also advocating for policies. Tell us, there might be people out there that don't really understand the importance of a school board. Can you maybe talk about how many board members actually make up the Henderson County School Board? What kind of decisions go into being a board member, and what that has to do with policy, in terms of
Yeah, the school board, currently there are 4 school board members that are stepping down or retiring from the Henderson County School Board. And there are 8 candidates running for Henderson County School Board. And out of all of those 8 candidates, there are a couple that are educators, and there are some that are women, but at the same time, I'm the only minority out of the group.
Right. Okay.
And I have a lot of education training. I have my master's in curriculum instruction. I have over 15 years of education. So I bring a lot of diversity. I bring a lot of different experiences in education that some others may not have. My mom was a teacher. I learned from the very best about education, and culturally, teachers are trained very similarly in the Philippines, even though I got my degree here, to be empathetic teachers, to be concerned. Again, teachers are not in this for the pay, but I think the pay also helps teachers be who they can best be without having to work 3 jobs just to make ends meet. That's all part of the condition. And the school board basically sets the policies for what happens in the county or in the school district. And with the help of the superintendent and other people that run the schools on a day-to-day basis.
You mentioned the Philippines. maybe just talk a little bit about that. You're Filipino American. I moved here about a year ago. I've been here, since July of last year. I didn't even realize there was a Filipino community here in Western North Carolina. Apparently, Filipino community's been here for, I guess, 50 years or more,
Yeah.
since at least 1964. And I think what goes kind of hand in hand is, the diversity. Once, the good thing about diversity is that we get to know about each other's histories, or each other's cultures, and it brings about an understanding, because a lot of people don't even know about the Filipino history in the Philippines. I mean, the American history in the Philippines, had no idea. And that's something that needs to be changed, not just on Filipino history, but for just across the board.
Yeah.
I would assume.
The history, when you talk about World War II, World War I, the Philippines, when you look at the history that are taught in the schools, it just slightly touches on the history of the Japanese and the Philippines, and how the Philippines and the U.S. have really joined forces, so far as that the U.S. colonized the Philippines. And when they colonized the Philippines, they wanted the instruction for the nurses to be very similar, and education to be similar to how they teach in the U.S. And so that is why, for example, in the nursing field, not to deviate, but the nurses that are being recruited are predominantly from the Philippines, because the educational structure is very like the U.S. and it's very similar to the U.S.
So
And
it's
same thing for education, and that's how we got here, was because my mom was a teacher, and she was one of 7 teachers recruited by the superintendent in Ohio to come to Ohio to teach, because the Philippines is one of the countries where you speak predominantly English. And
yes.
so there's a lot of Filipinos are known for their hospitality, their warmth, and that also carries into education, where we do above and beyond for our students. I learned how to cut borders and make my own borders and do all kinds of things as a teacher that most educators don't learn anymore.
Well, I know that there's a deep, rich history of Filipino nurses in the U.S., and I think that's something that's being more publicized and written about. Now, there are a couple things that I want to would like you to touch on, because this is a Zoom call and it is a freebie because I don't have the premium account. But you touched on diversity and inclusion and the importance of that. There are a couple other things that I'd like you to touch on too, and I think you may have already touched on it, but again, teacher support and respect, and then also addressing the next steps on how to deal with COVID-19.
Yeah. Well, as far as in teacher respect, I think the way you can show teachers respect is how you treat them in the classroom, how principals treat teachers in the classroom. Because I know when I was teaching in the elementary school one time, the principals, I'd call in and say, hey, I need to use the bathroom. And she says, well, you're just going to have to wait, because I can't come cover for you, and I can't send anyone to come cover for you. That's not teaching respect. That's not having respect for your teachers. Teaching at the high school level, if you needed to go to the bathroom, you can just open the door and say, hey, can you watch my kids, or call the office, and they'd send another administrator down to cover your class. If you absolutely had to go, you have planning time. That's the other thing. Elementary school teachers really don't have that much planning time. 30 minutes is not enough time to plan for multiple subjects. In high school, we plan for subjects, but we have 90 minutes also to do planning. That's another way you can show respect for your teachers. Show them that you care. The community can also show caring for the teachers by maybe having a special outing evening on the town for the teachers, or having some kind of teacher appreciation, which we do have, but it's handled differently with each school. Our principal used to come around with the other assistant principals once a quarter with fruit and bagels and things like that, they'd come around just to, and coffee, to show respect for the teachers for that day. There's always ways to show appreciation in small and large ways. But the other thing that they've done right now is they've frozen teacher salary steps, so that if you're on step 10, let's say, you can't go to step 11 or 12 or 13 or 14 or 6, wherever you are, because they have frozen it on the state level. That is not right. You're supposed to get your incremental step as a teacher, and you're not getting that. Plus, they've also taken away master's pay. So if you were not grandfathered in and you have your master's degree like I have, you don't get that master's pay.
So are these policies that were put in place on the state level?
Correct.
I see. So even if the local decided to go the other way, it wouldn't go forward, because the state would trump.
Yeah.
Always trumps local. I mean, no pun intended. Let me
but
just.
There are ways that you can work with your county, with your local government, and also your state governments to help promote that.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to just be frozen.
Yes. So there are ways that you can you repeat that again? So there are ways that you can work around that through the local, and
yes.
then I guess through the state?
We have county commissioners, we have our state reps. Our state reps live locally, okay?
Yes.
They live locally in Henderson County. We can have conversations with them. We can have dialogue with them. We can put something out for the community saying, hey, we need to have our teachers' pay reflected by their years of service. They are cutting everything else out. Teachers are very vital to us. People are now realizing teachers are vital to how the economy progresses and prospers.
Yes. And, of course, that goes hand in hand with our future, and, having an informed and, community that's able to think critically. And I know that's something that's not always, that's not something that's always encouraged or stressed. So again, Florence, you're a teacher with much experience. You've been an advocate for
all my life.
All your life for teachers. I know you've been through times that you've had to deal with certain adversity. We're going to wrap up in a couple minutes, but let me do some word association with you, okay? And just tell me, just shoot out a word. Just tell me what you think. First, right off the bat, okay? Empathy.
Sincerity. Caring.
All right. What about inclusion?
Everyone of all races, genders, ethnicities. They're not all one words, but
right.
All of that is really critical and important. Okay. There's a research, not to deviate, but there's a Pew Research where they are showing the increased number of population diversity increasing year by year. And that's not currently being addressed in the schools.
Okay. Again, this is Florence Allbaugh. Very happy to have her as our first podcast guest of People's Poet Podcast Triple P, running for Henderson County School Board. And before we wrap up, just leave us with any last words that you'd like to have people remember, because we're going to post this in different places, and people who may not be aware of you or your campaign can get information on how they can perhaps help. They want to volunteer or whatever the case is.
I have a Facebook page, Florence Allbaugh for Henderson County School Board. I can share that with everyone, but if you just go to Facebook and look Florence Allbaugh for Henderson County School Board, you will find it. Also, just in closing, our children are the most important. They are the future leaders of our country. It is important to teach with empathy, with care, with diversity and respect.
Okay, thank you so much. Again, that was empathy, care, diversity, and what was the last one? We kind of dropped off. And respect. So, and I think, you know, I think that speaks for a whole lot. That kind of, if you look at everything, they're all separate, but they're all kind of they all kind of tie in together very importantly. Again, Florence Allbaugh, that's A-L-B-A-U-G-H?
A-L-L-B-A-U-G-H.
Florence, A-L-L-B-A-U-G-H.
If they want to make a donation, they can send it to Florence Allbaugh for Henderson County School Board, P.O. Box 133, P.O. Box 133, Etowah, North Carolina, 28729.
Okay, so that would be P.O. Box 133?
Correct.
Etowah, North Carolina,
Correct.
28729.
Yes.
28729, and that would be Florence Allbaugh for Henderson County School Board. Thank you so much, Florence. Thank you for taking the time from your busy day of doing yard work, working very hard in that yard.
You got to plant roots with our kids.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you so much for being the first guest of the People's Poet Podcast. You know, we want to make this a regular thing, and we want to, you know, speak to people that are making an impact on our communities here out in Western North Carolina. Again, thank you so much, and best of luck on Election Day.
Thank you, Tony, and good luck on your brand new podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.